Welcome to the Bullish Drive Podcast, where we explore the realms of faith, mental performance, and personal testimonies through conversations with high-level performers. Join us as we extract valuable insights from their experiences to supercharge your pursuit of peak performance. This is the Bullish Drive Podcast. What's up, fam? It's James, your mental performance coach, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bullish Drive Podcast. And if you're new, first off, thank you for checking out our show. Here we interview high-level performers, professional athletes, and musicians and trainers, and just discuss mindset, faith, testimonies, and really just share their wisdom and experiences for free to all of you who are aspiring to take their athletics and music to the next level. And of course, you're looking for a mental performance coach, check us out at www.bullishdrive.com and set up a free consultation. And so we always hear the mind-body connection, but really, what is it? Here's a small example. If you are playing a game and your mind is sitting in fear or the next play or worried about screwing up or the anxiety of filling up the stats the way you want to, and you're still expecting your body to perform well, that's a mind-body disconnect. Instead, we want to try and figure out if the thoughts that we're having in our heads are actually being beneficial or harmful. At the end of the day, we have 60,000 plus thoughts that go through our mind. Are all of them good? No. Are all of them bad? No. But what's important is to be aware of them and how they are affecting our abilities to perform. You know, in the Bible in Corinthians, it says to capture all thoughts and make them obedient. Because the truth is, we can either have control over our thoughts or our thoughts have control of us. And in the latter situation, that's when we can have bad performances. That's when our stress, anxiety, past experiences, future worries can really hinder our game and take us from peak performance to struggling. And here's another example. Have you ever played just a perfect game? Lights out. Every shot was dropping, every tackle was getting made, you were in the right position, every play was happening, and you still lost the game. And on the flip side, have you ever played a game where you feel like you had two left feet, shooting offhand no matter what? You're missing tackles, it seemed like both eyes were covered, but you still won? Because there's so many uncontrollables in a game. And when we focus on the uncontrollables, we lose track of what we can do in every single moment of the game. Sometimes we pull ourselves out of the game. It doesn't take an injury. It doesn't take getting subbed out. It doesn't take some other reason that you're not at the game. Sometimes it's simply within our own minds that we pull ourselves out. And that's where it does a full 180 and comes back to, are we aware of how our thoughts are affecting our performance? And so today we really dive into the mind-body connection, and most importantly, the effects of faith and prayer when it comes to setting up our minds to be successful and being the best coaches it can be for our performances. Because that goes back to that saying, to be your best cheerleader. I disagree. We don't want to be the best cheerleader because cheerleaders are cheering when we're screwing up, right? But a coach will let you know when you have to change what you're doing to be successful. So be your best coach. How do we get our minds to be the best coach? That can take faith and prayer. And today our guest combined that beautifully in what she does in her own mindset coaching and her own physical training, which she works with athletes, and she shares her testimony and her faith walk and how that has positively affected the way she trains and the way she competes. So today we have fellow mindset coach and physical trainer Keana Burr on the Bullish Drive Podcast. Keana, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to have you on here. So how about we start off by just kind of talking about what you do and like, who do you like to work with? What's kind of your approach? Let's hear a little bit more about who Keana Burr is.
Yeah, so I'm Keana Burr. I own my own company called Transcend Body and Mind. I am a mindset coach and a fitness coach. So I basically I'm trying to help people become the best versions of themselves, both mentally and physically. As a fitness coach, I end up being a mindset coach as well, because 80% of what you do is mental. So I would even go as far as everything you do is mental. So there's a lot of mindset coaching into there. But yeah, that is the gist. I've been doing this for 5 years now. I've had my business for 5 years. I'm truly passionate about mental health and just like how important it is to take care of your brain. And that is both like a physical thing and a mental thing to make sure your brain is healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you talk about just a healthy brain, how does that affect someone's body? Because I think a lot of times we separate it because our physical bodies are so observable, right? You can tell if someone's body is healthy, right? But now mental health is something that can be kind of hidden under the hood. So what's the connection between that mind and body that you see?
Yeah. So as far as like just being able to go out and function properly is like stress management, emotional intelligence, being able to like settle yourself down when you're experiencing a negative emotion, and just being able to feel a negative emotion. I'll bring it back to training and fitness, like weightlifting, it's a pain. You're supposed to feel pain. You're supposed to feel a burn. And a lot of people, they can't handle that mentally. So being able to coach someone, letting them understand like this is just a temporary pain to get you to a long-term, better, healthier goal to accomplish. So just things like that. Stress management is probably the biggest. In our times, it seems like everyone is in a fight or flight stage. All the time, and knowing how to just settle your mind and get yourself in like a peaceful place on a daily basis instead of being stressed and reactive all the time. So yeah. I love that. Now you mentioned about in our current times right now, I think about when you're talking about just living through some of that hardship, for the long-term goal, right? And I think about Lincoln's famous quote about discipline, like discipline is just separating what you want now versus what you want most. And I feel like you said, we just live in a time that doesn't train people up very well on that sense. Have you seen a shift in your work? Do you feel like there is a certain cultural norm that sets people up to just want things right now and struggles through the hardship? Oh yes, it is huge. And that's exactly why I became a mindset coach, because I started out just as fitness. I always knew I wanted to do something with mental health, but a lot of clients were struggling just understanding that it's a process. And also the process never ends. You can't just do this for 3 months and then just be done with it. But we're set up as a society to get that instant gratification. And if it doesn't work right now, then just give up. So mentally having people or work with people every step of the way to understand that you have to appreciate the journey, you have to enjoy the journey, because a lot of the times, even when you achieve that goal of whether it's the perfect body or that brand new car and stuff like that, it doesn't change how you feel inside. And a lot of people they think oh, I just need a perfect body and then my life will be perfect. I just need that car and then my life will be perfect. And then when you come to realize, when you get those things, you don't change. It's all in there. So no external thing is going to make you feel better. It's actually doing the work internally to make you feel good and generate true So I also touch a lot about meditation and prayer, which we'll get into, I'm sure. But that's a huge thing on my daily practice is meditation and prayer. Being able to just sit still with yourself instead of always being at effect of your environment. I think that's huge.
That's so huge. And I love how it's just, you talk about process, being in the process. What's your approach? So if someone comes to you first and you're kind of evaluating or assessing on whatever tool you use to kind of get where you understand where they're at, how do you even introduce that idea in our culture right now to a new athlete or a new bodybuilder or someone who's just entering the space?
So as far as a mindset coach or a fitness coach?
Oh, I mean, whatever approach you want to take, so just how do you get them used to and comfortable to that process? Because like you said, exactly, you can have everything in the world, but if your mind isn't set to, to be thankful and grateful for where they're at, they're not going to find joy, so how do you introduce that to somebody?
So ultimately, like I love to meet people where they're at. I have enough experience now and worked with so many different type of people. I know that every approach is different for every person. Everyone's right. Different. And honestly, like I had to study and learn the individual, like what they've gone through, what works best for them in each approach. And obviously like very slow. Mm-hmm. I like to do what they want to do as far as like what are their goals, what exactly they want to do, and then I slowly introduce like the steps that they actually need. Mm. A lot of people just like, oh, I just need, if I want a perfect body, I just need to train with you 5 times a week and that's it. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. And then once they get going, I'm like, okay, but we also need to work on that diet. Okay, and then we also need to work on your sleeping habits, because if you're not resting well enough, you're not going to recover and your body isn't going to change, and stuff like that. So I meet them where they're at, I cater to their needs, and then I add my steps as well that will actually achieve that goal. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I love how you lay that out, and especially just meeting them where they're at. Right. Not everybody comes in at the same spot. And I think just as a listener or a new potential client to recognize that too, like the journey starts differently for everybody, but most importantly, it needs to start somewhere.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Who's kind of your main sport? What's your main sport that you focus on when you're meeting with people?
So, I actually work with all types. I don't necessarily have a niche, except I attract mostly bodybuilders as of late, because I just became a professional bodybuilder. So that's a lot of people come to me because they recognize me in that space. But I have a lot of just lifestyle, regular, day-to-day corporate stuff like that. Was that the question that you're asking? I'm sorry.
That's the question. If it wasn't, this was still a great direction to go to. So no, I appreciate it. Yes, that is the question though.
Yes. So those are the people that I tend to work with. It's usually I also need to work on this. I don't market as much. I'm more of like word of mouth, and people, whoever naturally gravitates to me, I work with. So usually if people are following me on social media and they just like what they're seeing, they understand, like they basically like resonate with me. Some part of me they see in themselves. That's the clients that I like to work with, because I think it's just so important to anyone out there listening, is like when you're working with a coach or a therapist, you need to make sure that you connect with them. Mm-hmm. If you don't connect with them, even if they're a really good coach, if you don't connect with them, it won't be as effective. Whatever the goal you're trying to accomplish, it won't be as effective. There's a lot of great coaches. There's a lot of great therapists. There's a lot of great like counselors and all of that out there, but there's some that will be better suited for you, just because of your guys' walks of lives just resonate a little bit better than others. So I think that's really important if you're out there looking for a coach or something.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. You need that connection relationship. It's a lot easier to be coached by somebody that you can relate with versus someone you can't. Can't my microphone. Yeah. Now you mentioned therapy really quick. Is mental performance coaching or mindset coaching therapy?
No. So I always like to differentiate that in consultation. So you can tell me your how you like to explain it, but the difference between therapy and mindset coaching for me is therapy, it goes more into your past and helps you understand your trauma and why you have certain behaviors or responses to certain situations and triggers. But mindset coaching is taking where you are right now and working you towards a future goal and how to find tactics and different strategies to achieve that goal, and work through any like mental blocks that you have along that way. Whether that's self-doubt, lack of discipline, stuff like that. We would work on those skills to better them.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I come from a therapy background, so I think sometimes it's hard for me to differentiate the two. And I really don't want to do therapy. Like, I'm putting that out on the airwaves. Like, I want to coach. I want to coach people. And you said it perfectly. You know, therapy is a lot of diving into the history, the background, what happened yesterday, and coaching is shooting for those goals, helping us train you to do that. And sometimes the past will come into that play, but it's not like we're trying to, fix the roots of that stuff. We're just recognizing how it affects the training. So I like your approach with that. Earlier, you talked about meditation and prayer, and I don't think a lot of people think about it on the level of mental health and mental performance when it comes to prayer a lot. I think there's this connection with like church and faith and religion, versus this can help my performance. This can help my, sport. This can help whatever it is that you're going through. So can you share some of your insight about how you tie in prayer and meditation to something like bodybuilding or training somebody up?
Yeah. So ultimately, prayer and meditation, it's just helping your overall well-being. And when you're just overall just more healthy on a spiritual level, you just perform better in general with anything you put your mind to. So as prayer and meditation, I do think they're very similar, only because their main goals are to take the focus off of you or anything in the past or anything that's going on in your current circumstance. And it wants you to focus to internal, to source, whether that's God or just being conscious and aware and in your body, not anything external.
Right. So,
and I just think that's so important to have that, whether it's just a few minutes a day, to understand. And I think this is the biggest objective of those two things, is you yourself as a human are independent from your current circumstance. And your circumstance can always change. If you're going through the worst thing right now, that can change in a matter of hours or days. And to understand that, because I feel like we get so engulfed and we feel like we are our circumstance. We are what happens to us. But we need to understand and remove ourselves for a couple minutes that, no, we're not our circumstance. We are this being. And to our Christian faith believers, that God created us and that He has us. And no matter what we're going through, He loves us unconditionally. He forgives us for all our sins. He gives us grace. And that is something that we need to remind ourselves on a daily basis, especially when we're going through tough times. And to relate that to bodybuilding, it's a very competitive sport. And it's a sport that you're literally on stage being compared to individuals. And I think that's a perfect sport to symbolize what's going on in today's society as far as social media. We're always comparing ourselves to others. And meditation and prayer is just a chance for me to just love myself and feel God's love and completely unplug myself from my external environment and just look inward. So I love that. It's the controllables versus the non-controllables, right? And that connection with church, I love just hearing your faith with that. And I originally ran across you because my loctician
is a bodybuilder, and I saw some connection. I'm like, oh yeah, Keana, that I should try and reach out and see if we can connect. And then, you know, small world, I saw you pop up on some of our church social media posts, and I'm like, oh, and she's a woman of God, we got to get her on the show. So can you talk a little bit about that, kind of your journey, because I can tell like you have a great relationship with God. How did that affect just your journey up to this point in what you're doing?
Oh, I just got goosebumps. Okay. So I actually just started my walk again with God in April of this year. I grew up Lutheran. I went to church up until I was like 7 years old. And then we moved from my hometown and I just stopped going to church. My mom kind of just left it up to us. If we wanted to be religious, we could be religious, but we had to go do it on our own. And I just never really thought about it. And up until earlier this year, I was doing great, like financially, physically, emotionally, mentally. I was doing all of the things. And I was like, something's still off. What is it? And I just had this, like, something just came to me and it was just like, it's my spirituality. Like, I'm Native American. I'm from a reservation in North Dakota. And we're just like, as Native Americans, we're naturally spiritual. But I realized I wasn't practicing my spirituality. There's a difference between saying that you're spiritual and actually practicing it.
Yep. 100%.
I can say, because I used to play basketball, I could say I'm a basketball player, but I haven't picked up a ball, like I pick it up once a year. So there's a huge difference. And yeah, it was crazy because like I had Post-it notes all over my wall, and I put the word religion on a Post-it note about 2.5 years ago, and I never did anything with it. And people kept on telling me about Creative Church, and finally, just one Sunday, I looked up Creative Church service times, and I went to one of the services, and I walked in right when worship was happening. And it was just such a profound moment for me. Like I got instant goosebumps and immediately started bawling my eyes out I couldn't tell you why. And I just felt the presence of God right away. It was just the most beautiful moment. And my life changed instantly from there. It's definitely been a journey. There's definitely ups and downs, especially when you'll learn this for anyone that's new. When you're getting closer to God, I feel like the enemy tries to come at you more.
Yep.
So the enemy has definitely been trying me this year, but it has made me lean in and trust more in God and what he has for me. So there's been highs and lows, but like it has been such a beautiful journey. And I don't know how I would have got through this year without my faith. So yeah.
Man, that's so good. That's such a great story. I love just how instantly you felt, you know, God's warmth and how you're able to feel that. And, you know, one verse that I always fall back on just as an athletic Christian, you know, is the Corinthians 9:24-25, right? Where don't you know everyone runs the race, right? But there can only be one winner, so race to win, right? And it's like, well, what does that look like? Well, 25 says, you know, everyone who plays in the games trains, but they train for a crown that won't last forever, and we train for a crown that lasts for all eternity. You know, and you're right. And I love that. And I love that. And I was in the exact same place as you, I feel like, when it came to not actively practicing. Right. And I was just talking to somebody about, you know, I'm a former rugby player. You know, and when I say former, because I don't do 2-a-days. I don't travel. Like, I don't travel to other states to compete. You know, I'm not eating the way I used to be. Like, that's why I'm a former rugby player. And I think there's a lot of former Christians right now. those who are used to be Christian or claim they're Christian, but they're not training, they're not eating bread of life, they're not, going where they're supposed to be. And what you said was just so powerful, and how fast God is willing to embrace us, that prodigal child, and you've returned. And I love that.
Yeah. And it's just like, God's timing is so beautiful too. Like, he calls us all at different times. And I feel like it was like the perfect moment that like like I said, for years, I wanted to start my spiritual journey and start going to church. And like, for some reason, like it all just worked out. And I met like, I'm not sure if you know who Madeline is, but yes. And like, that was like another huge thing is when I went there and I left, usually like when you go to church, you usually feel like you're just like this one individual, and it feels like you're not like part of something. It's just like you go and you leave. Right. But Creative, when I was walking out, she like was like, hey, and like she's like, I follow you on Instagram, blah blah blah, and like she invited me to small group, and like that was such a huge part as well, as just feeling like you're part of like a family or part of like a community, instead of just like feeling like you're on this journey alone. So I also encourage people to join like small groups. I was like a little weary. I'm like, I don't need a small group, but like, honestly, I love small group just as much as I love service. It's like amazing to just be a part of a community. And if you have questions about the Bible or just any struggles that you're going through, knowing that people can relate and like you can just talk to like people that you can trust and feel support. So yeah.
That's so I love the community at Creative is top notch. There's not a lot like it, with the small groups and building into that. And you talked about God's timing and that his timing was perfect in this moment. Could you share just what was the final nudge? What was the final straw, I guess, that was like, I'm gonna go today?
I don't think it's like anything like huge that was like, it was just like, it was like heavy on my heart. It was just like, you should go. And then finally it's just like, okay, today is the day. And I think it was just like wanting like that yearning to just like feel complete, to feel whole. And yeah, it was just like, I was just compelled. It's hard to explain it, but there wasn't like any like huge event that was happening. I just like, it just was like a more energetic, spiritual, felt compelled to go. Yeah. So yeah.
It's just like the want to go, and you listened, and God's voice is a whisper in the storm. And we got to remember that sometimes. And I think, for me, when I'm thinking about my own journey, there's something I missed, right? It was like I was grieving the loss of something. Like I could just feel it in my heart, and John Maxwell, he says, when he's talking to an atheist and they're like, whatever, like challenging him, or telling him like, I'm atheist. I love what he says back. He says, I know you're atheist, but don't you miss him? And I feel like that is just, it encompasses like what happens when people come back. They're like, I've come back, right?
Yeah.
And they're not like, I've arrived. They're like, I came back to church. I came back to Christ,
Yeah. And the interesting thing about like my story is, so I had a double bachelor degree, biology and psychology. And so I'm very science-based. Went to evolution class, like that was a requirement. And I think that was a little bit challenging with me, is like, where do those two things fit?
Yeah.
And I was very weary of some of the things, and it's like, you just have to see it. You just have to see it. And you just have to feel it. Like, when people talk to me, because a lot of my friends aren't Christians, and but I have like brought some to church, and they're like, oh my gosh. And like, I don't try to convince anyone of anything.
Exactly. Right.
It's just like, when God wants to put his hand on you and let you feel his presence, he will. And then there's nothing to be said. When you feel it, you'll know. Like,
right.
So it's just so interesting because it's like, even though I'm very science-based, we all know we are all spiritual creatures, because if we weren't, we would all just be robots with like no, like we could all just do the same thing and not be like, there's things in this world that are just unexplainable. And like, in like the physical realm, there has to be a spiritual realm to explain some of the things that happen on a day-to-day basis. So it's just, for any science base, I like understand, because there's some things that I'm like, and then I was like, okay, I saw it for myself and I was like, oh my gosh, wow. Okay. It's a lot. It's a lot. So,
it is, yeah. Man, I love that, especially hearing, you're very transparent, you're honest about, where you came from and where you're at. And I love that, especially bringing your friends to church, just bring them there. And we got to remind ourselves that we can't save people. That's not our job, right? We only can show them the door. And I used to struggle with, showing people the door and them not wanting to walk through it. And I was talking to my cousin the other day, who's a rancher with horses and everything like that and training. And I was like, I get frustrated. It's like the saying, when you lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, and like instantly he's like, yeah, you can't make him drink, but we give him a salt lick. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what do you mean by that? He's like, salt lick, we make them thirsty. And I'm like, oh, and we're like the salt of the earth. Like, that's what our job is. Like, our job is to make people have people see what we have and how Jesus is affecting us. So they're like, man, I want that,
Exactly.
And that completely changed the way that I invite people to church, and I love that. And so this conversation is incredible. I feel like we could go on for like hours now, and but I also want to respect your time, so we're down to the end of our time here. It went by fast. Is there anything you want to leave for our audience, listeners, or someone who's looking at church or mindset coaching? Any last thoughts?
I would say, as far as like, the most important thing that I've learned is like, your mindset, who you surround yourself around, your environment, are like some of the most crucial things that you should prioritize. And if you think about it, everything that you create, everything that you feel, everything that you do comes from a thought in your brain. So we need to work on our thoughts. We have over 60,000 thoughts a day, but which ones are you focusing on? And which ones are you being intentional? A lot of us just let our thoughts control us, but we're in control of our thoughts. So whether that, if you don't know like how to do that, I do recommend, I'm not saying me as a coach, I'm just saying seek a coach or a mentor or someone. I have coaches, I have therapists, like a coach even needs a coach. It is just so important to like have someone, a third party, empty out what's going on in your brain and help like sort through it and see like where we can get a little better at some things that you're possibly not seeing from your perspective, and they just help you sort some things out. That's the biggest thing I could say, is like, seek people that help you get better.
That's good.
I just went to a business breakfast. Did you go to that?
I had kids to drop off. Yeah, so it didn't work out, but I wanted to be there.
He said, I forgot his name, but he said that every person in your life, they're never neutral. They're either making you better or they're making you worse. So
that's good.
Be very mindful of who you surround yourself with. And that's why I think like church, like, is such a beautiful community, because it's all very like-minded people. We're all different walks of life, but we're coming for one same reason, and that's just to be in the presence of God. So make sure to surround yourself and be mindful of just like everything that you're ingesting mentally. So
that's so good. That's so good, man. This was such a awesome conversation. I appreciate you for being on the show, Keana. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, James. You were a really good host. It's not easy. It is not easy to like make conversation flow. So like, I just need to give you props for that. Yeah. So you're gifted. Very gifted at what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I hope you had fun. I mean, how can I support you? Because, you know, we're both kind of in the same realm. We focus on kind of different areas, and I just love supporting, you know, other people doing something I'm passionate about. So how can I support your agency or your company as well?
Yeah. So if anyone is looking for a mindset coach or a fitness coach, they can just reach out to me on Instagram or my website. My personal Instagram is just at Keana Burr, and then my business Instagram is at Transcend Body and Mind. And then that's also my website. Website is transcendbodyandmind.com. So if you guys are looking for any of that, that's how you can reach me.
Thank you guys for joining us on this week's episode of the Bullish Drive Podcast. And thank you, Keana, for joining us as well and talking and sharing about your awesome wisdom and testimony. And if you want to learn more about Keana and her services, check it out at transcendbodyandmind.com. You can also find her on Instagram at Keana Burr. And if you are an athlete or musician looking to take your skills and your performance to the next level, reach out to us at www.bullishdrive.com. Once again, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Bullish Drive Podcast. We'll see you next week. And always remember, it starts with you and your destiny is waiting. Peace.